In a quiet suburban neighborhood in the heart of the United States, there stood a modest two-story house at the end of a cul-de-sac. The house belonged to the Millers, a small family of three: James, a software engineer who worked from home, his wife, Sarah, a kindergarten teacher, and their 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Their home was filled with warmth, laughter, and the constant buzz of family life, but something strange was about to unsettle their peaceful existence. It all began on a rainy Tuesday evening. Lily had been given a new teddy bear for her birthday, a plush creature with soft brown fur, a red bow tie, and eyes that sparkled with an uncanny liveliness. She named him Mr. Snuggles, a fitting title for a bear that was meant to bring comfort and companionship. James and Sarah had no reason to think much of the gift at first. After all, it was just a stuffed animal, another in a long line of toys that Lily had accumulated over the years. But something about Mr. Snuggles seemed different. Lily adored her new teddy bear. She carried him everywhere, to the park, to the dinner table, even to bed. Every night, after Sarah tucked her into bed and kissed her good night, Lily would whisper secrets to Mr. Snuggles, as though the bear was her best friend. Sarah smiled softly at this, remembering the days when she had done the same with her own toys. It was all innocent and sweet, like any childhood fantasy. However, one night, something unexpected happened. It was shortly after midnight when Sarah awoke to the sound of a faint whisper. At first, she thought it was just the wind rustling the leaves outside, or perhaps the creaking of the old house settling into the cold night. But as the seconds passed, the whispering grew louder, more distinct. Sarah sat up in bed, her heart suddenly racing. She glanced over at James, who was still fast asleep beside her. Then, with a quiet breath, she slipped out of bed and crept into Lily's room. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a night light near the window. Lily was sound asleep, curled up beneath her covers, with Mr. Snuggles lying beside her. But the whispers were coming from the bear. Sarah's eyes widened as she tried to make sense of what she was hearing. The voice was soft and barely audible but unmistakable. It sounded like a faint melodic murmur, as if Mr. Snuggles was talking. "Who's there?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. The room was silent for a moment, the stillness almost suffocating. But then the whispering returned, louder this time, and Sarah could have sworn it came from the teddy bear. "Don't be scared, it's just me." The voice was warm, soothing, but it was undeniably strange. It was as if the bear was speaking directly to her. Frozen in disbelief, Sarah slowly reached out to touch Mr. Snuggles. Her fingers brushed against the soft fur, but there was no change in the voice. It continued to murmur gently, almost as if it were comforting Lily in her sleep. Sarah quickly pulled her hand back, heart pounding. She turned and rushed out of the room, her mind racing. Was she imagining things? Had she been dreaming? Or was something truly supernatural happening? The next morning, Sarah tried to brush off the incident as nothing more than a bizarre dream. But deep down she knew something wasn't right. The whispers, the strange feeling that something was hiding in her daughter's room, it all gnawed at her. She couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. She wasn't the only one who had noticed something strange. Over the next few nights, Lily started telling her parents that Mr. Snuggles was talking to her. At first, they thought it was just the wild imagination of a child, a phase that would pass. Lily would giggle and say things like, "Mr. Snuggles told me a secret," or, "He said he likes to stay awake and keep me company." But then Lily started describing things that she couldn't have known. She would say things like, "Mr. Snuggles said you and Daddy are happy together," or, "He said you like to drink coffee in the mornings." Things that only Sarah and James knew about, things that the bear had no way of knowing. The whispers continued, each night growing a little louder, a little clearer. At times it sounded like a lullaby, soothing and gentle. At other times, it was almost as if the bear was speaking in riddles, its voice low and mysterious. James, skeptical by nature, dismissed the idea at first. "It's just a phase," he told Sarah, shaking his head. "Kids have vivid imaginations. You've been under a lot of stress with work and everything. You're probably just hearing things." But Sarah couldn't let it go. Every night, she would lie awake, listening to the whispers from Lily's room. It was as though the bear was alive, conscious, aware of everything around it. And the strangest part was, no one could figure out how or why. That's when Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to the local electronics store and purchased a small security camera, one that was designed to be discreet and easy to install. She set it up in Lily's room, facing Mr. Snuggles, determined to find out what was really happening. A week passed and every night the whispers grew more intense. But it wasn't until Sarah sat down to review the footage one evening that she finally saw it. The moment that would change everything. On the video screen, Lily was fast asleep, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. Mr. Snuggles sat beside her, his beady eyes gleaming in the low light. Then, just as Sarah watched in disbelief, the bear's mouth moved. A soft, almost imperceptible shift in the fabric, and then the voice, clear, unmistakable, came through the camera speakers. "Shh, don't tell anyone, they wouldn't understand." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The teddy bear was talking. She didn't know whether to scream or faint. All she could do was stare at the screen, her hand trembling as she pressed play again and again and again. Each time, the voice was the same, a whispering murmur that seemed to be speaking directly to Lily, as if it had a life of its own. This was no longer just a childish fantasy. Something was wrong, something terrifying was unfolding in her own home. And Sarah had no idea what it was, or why it was happening. But one thing was certain, Mr. Snuggles was not just a teddy bear. And whatever secret he was hiding, Sarah was about to uncover it. The following days felt like an endless spiral of confusion for Sarah. Each morning, she awoke to the same uneasy feeling, a sense that something was off, something hidden in the shadows of their seemingly perfect home. The footage from the camera had only deepened her concerns, and yet, when she tried to speak to James, he brushed it off, attributing it to her overactive imagination. But Sarah knew better. She had heard the voice, had seen the unnatural way Mr. Snuggles had moved his mouth. She couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was lurking beneath the surface, something far beyond the realm of mere imagination. That evening after dinner, Sarah sat alone in the living room, replaying the footage from Lily's room again. The video was grainy, but the clarity of the voice was undeniable. It sent a chill down her spine every time she heard it. "Shh, don't tell anyone, they wouldn't understand." Sarah couldn't stop thinking about those words. They wouldn't understand. Who was they? And why was the bear telling Lily to keep quiet? The questions swirled in her mind, each one leading her further into the abyss of uncertainty. Was it just a toy, or was there something more to it? Something more sinister? She paused the video and stared at the still image of Mr. Snuggles, his eyes seemingly glinting in the dim light of Lily's room. The longer she looked at him, the more she began to feel an unease that went beyond the eerie voice. It was as if the bear was watching her, studying her. Her mind raced. Could the bear somehow be connected to something supernatural? Was it cursed? Or was it possible that someone was secretly controlling it, using some form of technology to manipulate it? There had to be an explanation. She refused to believe that a child stuffed animal could possess the ability to speak on its own. There had to be a logical reason. At that moment, Lily entered the room, her small face bright with innocence, but there was something unsettling about her expression. She walked up to Sarah, clutching Mr. Snuggles in her arms, his fuzzy body cradled protectively against her chest. "Mommy, Mr. Snuggles says you're scared," Lily said, her voice as soft and sweet as ever. Sarah blinked, her breath catching in her throat. What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lily looked up at her mother with wide, trusting eyes. "He says you're worried. He says you don't believe him." Sarah swallowed, her hands trembling as she reached out to stroke Lily's hair. "What is he saying, Lily? What does he want?" Lily tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then, in a hushed voice, she spoke again. "He says that you need to ask him. He'll tell you everything, but you have to listen carefully. He's been waiting for you." Her words struck Sarah like a bolt of lightning. He's been waiting for you. The bear had been waiting for her. It was as if he knew she was onto him, as if he was daring her to find the truth. But what truth? "Lily," Sarah said softly, trying to keep her voice steady, "tell me, when Mr. Snuggles speaks to you, does he ever tell you anything else? Anything strange?" Lily paused for a moment, looking thoughtful. Then she nodded slowly. "He told me once that I'm special. That he's been looking for someone like me. He says I have a gift." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. A gift? What could that possibly mean? Why would a stuffed bear speak like this? And what kind of gift was he talking about? Before Sarah could press further, James walked into the room, his presence grounding her, if only slightly. He noticed the concerned look on Sarah's face and raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice casual but laced with curiosity. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then turned to him, her voice low. "James, I think we need to do something about the bear." He gave her a skeptical look. "Sarah, we've talked about this. Lily's just imagining things. It's normal for kids to make up stories, especially with a new toy. There's no reason to panic." But Sarah wasn't convinced. No reason to panic? How could he say that, knowing what they'd both seen on the camera? How could he dismiss it so easily? "I'm not panicking," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "But this isn't just a phase, James. I've seen the footage. The bear is speaking. It's not normal. We need to figure out what's going on before it's too late." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right. What do you want me to do? You really want me to take this seriously?" "I don't know," Sarah replied, her voice faltering. "But I think we need to find out where the bear came from. Maybe someone is behind this. Maybe it's some kind of prank or some new technology, but we have to know. For Lily's sake." James looked at Sarah, then at Lily, who was holding Mr. Snuggles with an almost possessive grip. He sighed, defeated. "Fine. I'll help you. But we need a plan." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing with possibilities, each one more disturbing than the last. She had to find out what the bear was hiding, what it wanted, and why it was targeting Lily. There was no way she could let this go, no way she could ignore it. At the crack of dawn, she got to work. Her first instinct was to search the internet for any mention of a talking teddy bear, something that could explain what was happening. After hours of scouring forums, reading through countless articles, and even looking into paranormal websites, she found a lead. There was an old rumor, a story passed down through generations about a rare type of doll, a cursed doll to be precise. According to the legend, these dolls were created using a strange, forbidden technique, a way of binding the spirit of a deceased person into a toy. The dolls would remain silent for years, waiting for the right child to come along. A child with a special gift, someone who could hear them. Once they had found their chosen one, the doll would begin to whisper, imparting cryptic messages, often luring the child into a dark secret. As Sarah read the legend, her stomach twisted with fear. A cursed doll? Was that what Mr. Snuggles was? The idea seemed ridiculous at first, but everything was starting to fall into place. The whispers, the strange behavior, the way Lily was being drawn into the bear's world. It all fit. Determined to get to the bottom of this, Sarah turned to James. She showed him the information she had found, her voice trembling as she explained the ancient curse that might be at play. James listened in silence, his skepticism beginning to waver. He had seen enough to know that there was something wrong with the bear, something that couldn't be explained by science or reason alone. "I think we need to find the origin of this bear," Sarah said, her voice steely with resolve. "We have to figure out where it came from and what's been done to it. If there's even a chance that this bear is cursed, we need to act fast." James nodded, finally seeing the seriousness in her eyes. "Okay, we'll find it. Together." And so, the Millers set out on a new mission, to uncover the truth behind Mr. Snuggles. But as they ventured further into the mystery, they would come to realize that the bear's secret was darker than they could have ever imagined, and the deeper they dug, the more danger they would face. The whispers were only the beginning. The next few days were filled with a sense of urgency, as if the clock was ticking down toward something inevitable. Sarah and James had spent hours searching for any clue, trying to uncover the origins of Mr. Snuggles, but so far their efforts had yielded little. There were no records of toys or dolls like it anywhere online, and the few supernatural forums they visited spoke only in riddles and vague warnings. The more they dug, the more they realized that no one seemed to know much about the cursed toys of the legend, except that they were rare and dangerous. Lily, meanwhile, seemed blissfully unaware of the danger lurking around her. She continued to play with Mr. Snuggles as if nothing had changed, chattering away to him during the day and holding him close at night. But each time Sarah saw the bear, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. She had watched the footage again, trying to analyze every little detail, but it only left her with more questions. The movements of Mr. Snuggles were subtle, a shift in its head, a slight movement of the mouth, but it was enough to make her heart race. James, however, had started to take Sarah's concerns more seriously. He was no longer dismissing it as her overactive imagination. The unsettling footage and the bizarre things Lily had said made him feel uneasy too. But he wasn't entirely convinced that a cursed doll was the explanation. He had a more practical mindset, one that was rooted in logic, and he was determined to find a rational explanation. It was late one evening when Sarah found herself staring at Mr. Snuggles again, her mind spinning with possibilities. She had seen the footage so many times, yet every time it felt like something new stood out. Her eyes traced the bear's features, the sharpness of its stitched smile, the lifelike gleam in its eyes. But something had been bothering her that she hadn't noticed before. There was a small, almost imperceptible mark on the back of the bear's neck, hidden beneath the soft fur. It looked like a faint scar, as though the bear had been sewn or repaired at some point. Her pulse quickened. Could this be the key to understanding what was happening? Had someone tampered with it, created this strange connection to Lily? The thought consumed her as she reached for the bear. Her fingers trembled as she carefully moved the fur aside, revealing the scar more clearly. It was small, a thin line of stitching that had been hidden beneath the surface for as long as they had owned it. But what truly caught her attention was what lay beneath. The scar seemed to conceal a small, delicate compartment. It was almost imperceptible, like a hidden latch. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she carefully pried it open. Inside there was a tiny, folded piece of paper. The moment she saw it, she knew that it was something important, something that could change everything. With shaking hands, she unfolded the paper. It was old, yellowed with age, and the edges were frayed, as though it had been tucked away for a very long time. The handwriting was uneven, hurried, but legible. Read. The bearer of the gift will come, but the gift will come at a price. The one who seeks the truth must be careful, for once the path is taken, there is no turning back. The child will be chosen, and the bear will speak. Do not trust the whispers. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. The child will be chosen. The bear will speak. The words echoed in her mind, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. It was everything Lily had said, everything she had feared. But what did it all mean? What was this gift, and what price would it demand? She turned the paper over, hoping to find more, but there was nothing else, just a blank surface. No signature, no additional information. It left Sarah with more questions than answers, but she knew one thing for certain. The bear was not just a toy. It was part of something much darker, something that had been set in motion long before they had ever found it. She needed to tell James. She needed to show him what she had discovered. The next morning, she waited for him to wake up, her hands still trembling from the shock of her discovery. She knew she couldn't wait any longer to confront him with the truth. As soon as James entered the kitchen, Sarah was standing there, holding the small, folded paper. "James," she said quietly, her voice strained. "I found something." He looked at her, a mix of curiosity and concern in his eyes. He had been working late the night before, trying to come up with a plan to investigate further, and he was clearly exhausted. But when he saw the paper in her hands, his face went pale. "What is that?" he asked, stepping forward. "I think it's a message," Sarah replied, her voice shaking. It was hidden inside Mr. Snuggles, behind a small scar on the bear's neck. "I think it's some sort of warning." She handed him the paper, and James slowly took it from her, reading the words carefully. His brow furrowed as he processed the meaning behind the cryptic message. When he finished, he looked up at Sarah, his face grim. This is bad," he said quietly. "If this is true, if the bear really is part of some sort of curse, then we're in way over our heads." Sarah nodded, her heart heavy with fear. "I know. But I don't know what to do. We can't just leave Lily alone with this. The bear is talking to her. It's manipulating her." James paced back and forth, clearly deep in thought. Okay. We need to figure out how to stop it. If there's a curse, we need to break it, and we need to do it before it gets worse. But we don't even know how the bear became like this. What if it's not just a curse? What if it's something more? Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. Something more? What do you mean? What if someone is behind this? What if someone is controlling the bear somehow, using it to manipulate Lily? Maybe this isn't just a supernatural curse. Maybe it's something else entirely. We need to figure out who did this and why. The idea sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The thought that someone could be controlling the bear, using it to deceive and manipulate Lily, was almost too much to bear. But she had to be strong. They had to protect their daughter no matter the cost. James looked at Sarah, his expression determined. "We're going to find out what happened to this bear. We're going to uncover the truth no matter what it takes." Sarah took a deep breath. "How do we start?" "We start with the bear," James said. "We need to know where it came from, who made it, and why. We'll track down its origins. If it's connected to something supernatural, we'll need to find someone who knows how to break the curse. We're not going to leave any stone unturned." As they prepared to investigate further, Sarah felt the weight of what they were about to do. The path ahead was uncertain, and there was no telling what they would uncover. But one thing was clear: the bear was not just a toy. It was a key to something far darker, and the truth would come with a price. As the Millers set off on their journey to unravel the mystery of Mr. Snuggles, they unknowingly walked into the heart of a storm that would test their courage, their love, and their sanity. And they would soon realize that some truths were far more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. The following weeks were a blur of mounting tension and relentless searching. Sarah and James were on edge, always feeling as though they were being watched, as though the very walls of their home were closing in on them. Their days were consumed by research, contacting paranormal experts, and tracking down anyone who might know something about the cursed bear, while their nights were fraught with the eerie whispers that never seemed to cease. Lily, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing around her. To her, Mr. Snuggles was still the best friend she had ever had, a protector who whispered comforting words into her ear every night. Her innocent joy made it all the more heartbreaking, knowing that the entity inhabiting her beloved bear was not only deceiving her but might also be manipulating her in ways they didn't fully understand. One evening, after yet another fruitless search on the internet, James slammed his laptop shut in frustration. "There's nothing," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "It's like the bear just appeared out of thin air. No one's heard of anything like it. No records, no rumors, nothing." Sarah sat across from him, her face pale, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. She had spent hours combing through ancient texts, hoping to find even the faintest trace of the bear's origins. But everything she came across seemed to lead to dead ends. "I don't know what to do anymore," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's like we're chasing shadows. The more we dig, the more we realize we don't even know what we're up against." James sighed and leaned back in his chair. "We can't just give up. We need to keep pushing forward. Maybe there's something we're missing. Something we haven't considered yet." Sarah's eyes flickered toward the hallway, where Lily was playing with Mr. Snuggles. Her heart ached at the sight of her daughter, so innocent and carefree, unaware of the darkness surrounding her. It was as if the bear's hold on Lily was growing stronger by the day. The way Lily clutched it so tightly at night, the way she spoke to it as though it were a living, breathing entity, it all felt wrong. It was as if Mr. Snuggles had become the center of her world, and Sarah feared it was only a matter of time before the bear's influence extended even further. But what could they do? Every attempt to confront the bear, to take it away from Lily, was met with resistance. The moment they tried to separate her from Mr. Snuggles, she would cry, beg, and plead for him to be returned. It was like the bear had some kind of power over her, a power that neither Sarah nor James could comprehend. Suddenly there was a soft knock at the door, breaking the tense silence in the room. "Who could that be?" James murmured, looking at Sarah with a puzzled expression. No one had visited them in weeks, not since they'd started their frantic search for answers. Sarah stood and walked cautiously to the door, her pulse quickening as she reached for the handle. She opened it to find a man standing on the other side, a stranger with graying hair and dark eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. He wore an old, faded jacket and had the air of someone who had seen things that most people couldn't or wouldn't even begin to understand. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky. The man didn't smile. Instead, his gaze shifted to the hallway where Lily and Mr. Snuggles were playing. "I'm afraid you need to hear something," the man said, his voice low and grave. "I know what's happening to your daughter. And I can help you." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she demanded, stepping back slightly. "My name is Gabriel," he said, his tone unwavering. "And I'm here because I know about the bear. I've been tracking it for years." The mention of the bear sent a wave of cold dread rushing over Sarah. Her mind raced with questions. How could this man know about Mr. Snuggles? What did he mean by tracking it? Was he somehow involved with the bear? Tracking it? Sarah repeated, her voice trembling. "What? What's going on? What's happening to my daughter?" Gabriel looked at her for a long moment, as though weighing his words carefully. "Your daughter has been chosen. The bear has bound itself to her. It was meant to find someone like her, someone with a unique gift. And now that it has found her, it will not let go." James, who had been standing in the background, stepped forward. "You're saying the bear chose Lily? But why her? What does it want?" Gabriel's gaze hardened. "It's not a matter of what the bear wants. It's what it was created for. This bear, like others of its kind, was designed to manipulate, to influence, to control. It feeds off the bond it creates with the child it chooses. And over time, that bond becomes stronger, until the child is completely dependent on it." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Dependent on it?" she whispered. "What do you mean? What will happen to Lily?" Gabriel's expression darkened, and for a moment, he looked almost regretful. "Once the bond is complete, the child will no longer be their own. They will lose themselves, become mere vessels for whatever force controls the bear. And when that happens, it's too late. The child becomes an instrument for whatever the bear is meant to bring about." James looked at Sarah, his face pale. "No, this can't be real. This is insane." "I wish I were wrong," Gabriel said quietly. "But I've seen it happen before. I've tried to stop it, but it's not that simple. You can't just take the bear away. You can't just break the bond. It's woven too deeply into the child's psyche. The only way to sever it is to destroy the source of the power, the heart of the curse. Sarah's mind was spinning. The heart of the curse? What was he talking about? What could they possibly do to break the bond? Gabriel took a deep breath and spoke again, more softly this time. The bear is not just a toy. It was created by an ancient order, a group that dabbled in dark magic. They used the bear as a conduit for their rituals, transferring dark energy into the toy, giving it a life of its own. But there's more to the story. The bear was never meant to be a simple doll. It was meant to be a guide, a tool for something far more powerful. What is it guiding? Sarah asked, her voice tight with fear. Gabriel met her gaze. A child with a gift like Lily's is the key. She was chosen because of her ability to see things that others can't, things that shouldn't be seen. She's being pulled into something far bigger than you realize. James stepped forward. So what do we do? How do we stop it? Gabriel looked at them both with a grim expression. You have to find the place where the bear was created. You have to find the original source of its power. Without that, you'll never be able to break the bond. Where do we find it? Sarah asked, her voice trembling with desperation. Gabriel hesitated. I've been trying to track it for years. I know the bear was created by a hidden group, but I haven't been able to locate them. However, there's one place I believe you can start. A small town in the mountains far from here. I've heard whispers of strange occurrences there. People have gone missing, children have been found, with toys like Mr. Snuggles. You need to go there. That's where you'll find the answers. Sarah and James exchanged a look, both of them understanding the weight of what Gabriel was saying. If they didn't act soon, if they didn't find the source of the curse, Lily would fall further under the bear's control. Thank you, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. But how do we even begin? How do we find this place? Gabriel took a step back, pulling something from his coat. It was a small, weathered map, marked with a location deep in the mountains. He handed it to Sarah. This will lead you there, Gabriel said. But be warned. The closer you get to the source, the more dangerous it will become. The bear's influence will try to stop you. It will try to pull Lily back, and it will use everything it can to keep you from breaking the curse. Sarah took the map, her hands shaking, but she knew there was no turning back. She had to save Lily. They had to end this. As Gabriel turned to leave, he paused in the doorway and looked back at them, his expression somber. I hope you're ready, he said quietly. Because once you step onto that path, there's no going back. The door clicked shut behind him, and Sarah and James were left standing in the silence of their home, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and unknowns. But one thing was clear, the time had come to face the darkness and save their daughter. The sun was setting as Sarah and James stood in their living room, staring at the map in their hands. The weight of Gabriel's words hung heavily in the air, and the quiet hum of their home seemed louder than ever. The feeling of normalcy was slipping through their fingers, and the world as they knew it was becoming unrecognizable. They knew what they had to do, but that didn't make the journey ahead any less terrifying. The map was old, its edges frayed and yellowed with age, but the markings on it were clear. A small, isolated town deep in the mountains, a place that seemed too obscure to be real, as if it were a secret buried in time. Gabriel had given them no other instructions, no further guidance. Just the map and the warning, the closer you get to the source, the more dangerous it will become. James looked at Sarah, his expression determined but filled with uncertainty. We can't back out now, can we? He asked quietly. Sarah shook her head, her throat tight. No. We have to do this for Lily. We can't let her slip further away. They spent the rest of the night packing, preparing for the long journey ahead. They made arrangements for Lily's care, asking their closest friends to look after her, though they were careful not to say too much. What could they possibly explain? How could they tell anyone that their daughter was under the influence of a cursed bear? They didn't even fully understand it themselves. The next morning they set off, the car loaded with supplies for the trip, food, water, clothes, and a few personal belongings. Lily had grown fond of Mr. Snuggles over the past few weeks, and Sarah couldn't bring herself to take the bear from her. She didn't want to push her daughter too far. At least for now she would keep the bear close. They needed time to figure out how to break the bond, and Lily was still too attached to the bear to understand the danger it posed. The drive was long, and as they moved farther away from the familiar streets of their city, the world around them grew more desolate, the roads narrower, the landscape more wild. The mountains loomed ahead like silent giants, and Sarah couldn't help but feel that they were driving straight into a trap, one that had been set long ago. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Sarah murmured as she gazed out the window. The trees seemed to grow thicker the higher they climbed, their dark branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. There was an oppressive weight in the air, as though the world was holding its breath. James reached over and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. We'll figure it out. We always do. But even as he said it, Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes. He was just as scared as she was, but he had always been the steady one, the one who didn't let fear show. It made her heart ache, knowing that no matter what they did, there was no guarantee they would come out of this unscathed. As night began to fall, they reached the outskirts of the town. The place was smaller than they had imagined, a ghost town of sorts, with only a few scattered buildings along the main road. The streets were empty, the houses dark, and there was a chilling sense of abandonment hanging in the air. They checked into a small rundown motel at the edge of town, where the old woman at the front desk gave them a strange look but didn't ask any questions. Her eyes seemed too knowing, too old, and when she handed them their room key, her fingers brushed against Sarah's in a way that made her skin crawl. You'll find what you're looking for, the woman said cryptically before they left. But not without a price. The words sent a shiver through Sarah, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed some invisible threshold. They weren't just tourists passing through anymore. They were intruders stepping into a place that wasn't meant to be disturbed. Once inside their room, Sarah and James sat down at the small table, spreading the map out before them. The town didn't seem to have any real landmarks, only a few scattered buildings and the old forest that surrounded it. There was no sign of where they should begin their search, but something told Sarah that they weren't going to find answers by simply asking around. We need to go into the woods, James said, breaking the silence. That's where Gabriel said the answers lie, right? Sarah nodded, though her heart twisted in her chest. The woods were thick and dark and she could already feel their pull, the way the trees seemed to close in on them. But they had no other choice. The path to the truth lay within those woods and they had to follow it. We'll go tomorrow, Sarah said, trying to steady her nerves. But we should get some rest tonight. We'll need all our strength for what's coming. James agreed, but neither of them slept well. Every creak of the building, every whisper of wind outside, felt like it was a warning. Sarah's mind kept returning to the cryptic words Gabriel had spoken. The closer you get to the source, the more dangerous it will become. It felt like a prophecy, one that they had no way of escaping. At dawn they set out for the forest with Lily and Mr. Snuggles in tow. The air was thick with mist, the sun barely a pale glow behind the heavy clouds. The woods stretched out before them like a labyrinth, its shadows swallowing the light. As they ventured deeper into the trees, the path became less clear, and the silence around them grew more oppressive. It feels like we're being watched, Sarah whispered, her voice tight with unease. James didn't answer. He too could feel it, the sense that something was lurking just out of sight, waiting. They pressed on, following the map as best as they could, but it seemed like the further they walked, the more disorienting the woods became. After what felt like hours, they came upon a clearing, and there, standing in the center, was an old, decaying cabin. It was like something out of a nightmare, its walls cracked and weathered, the windows dark and empty. The air around it felt heavy, charged with something unnatural. It was as if the very ground beneath their feet had been soaked in darkness. This is it, Sarah breathed, her heart pounding in her chest. This is where it all started. James nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the cabin's eerie silhouette. This is where the bear was created, where the curse began. They approached the cabin cautiously, every step feeling like it was leading them further into the unknown. The door creaked open with a soft groan, revealing a dim, dusty interior. The air inside was thick with the smell of old wood and something else, something faintly metallic. Do you think it's safe to go in? Sarah asked, her voice tight. James didn't respond at first. He was focused, scanning the interior of the cabin for any signs of life or movement. Finally he nodded, his expression determined. We have no choice, he said quietly. We have to find out what's inside. They stepped over the threshold, the floorboards creaking underfoot. The inside of the cabin was sparse, with only a few broken pieces of furniture scattered around. But in the corner of the room, partially hidden by a tattered curtain, Sarah saw something that made her heart stop. A small altar, covered in faded cloth, surrounded by old, worn candles. And there, on the altar, was a large, intricate box. It looked ancient, its surface etched with strange symbols that seemed to writhe as they stared at it. The box was slightly open, revealing something inside, a dark, pulsing object that seemed to draw them in, its presence chilling and overpowering. Without thinking, Sarah reached for the box, her fingers trembling as she lifted the lid. The moment she did, the room seemed to shift. The air grew colder and the shadows seemed to grow longer, pressing in on them. A low, humming sound filled the space, vibrating through the floor and into their bones. Then a voice, soft and hissing, echoed through the room. "You shouldn't have come." It was Mr. Snuggles' voice, but it wasn't the voice Lily had heard. It was something darker, something far more sinister. Sarah gasped, stepping back as she felt the presence in the room grow stronger. It was no longer just a toy. It was alive, and it was angry. Before she could react, the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. The shadows swirled, and the voice grew louder, more insistent. "You cannot escape. The bear belongs to me. And now so do you." The walls seemed to close in, and Sarah knew with terrifying certainty that they had just awakened something far worse than they could have ever imagined. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in on them as the shadows grew longer, creeping over the floor like ink spilling from a forgotten jar. Sarah and James stood frozen, their hearts racing as the air grew colder, the oppressive weight of the darkness around them pressing down on their chests. The humming sound, soft at first, had grown louder. Now it filled the room, vibrating through the floorboards, vibrating through their very bones. The voice of Mr. Snuggles, now twisted and filled with malice, echoed in their minds. "You shouldn't have come." Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she turned to look at James. His face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. He reached for her hand, but even as his fingers brushed against hers, she could feel the cold, unnatural energy in the air. It was as though everything had come to life. As though the very cabin was breathing with them. The box on the altar was pulsing now, each beat of its rhythm like the heartbeat of something ancient and powerful. Sarah knew without a shadow of a doubt that this was the source of everything. The curse. The bear. The whispers in the night. It had all come from here, from this wretched place. "The bear belongs to me. And now so do you." The words wrapped around them like chains, and Sarah could feel a pull toward the box. A dark, insidious pull. It was as if something deep inside her was telling her to reach out, to take whatever was inside. The temptation was overwhelming. "No," Sarah whispered, her voice shaky. "We can't let it have us." But even as she said it, she felt the temptation, the lure. It was like a force beyond her control, like the very fabric of her will was being unraveled. James gripped her hand tightly, pulling her back from the altar. "Sarah, don't. We're not giving in to this. We came here to stop it, not become part of it." A cold laugh echoed from the shadows, a cruel sound that seemed to come from all around them. It was the bear, the malevolent force behind the whispers. The darkness in the room deepened, swirling like a storm. "You cannot escape me. I'm already a part of you. Lily's heart beats in time with mine, and she will never be free of me. She will be mine forever. Just as you will be." The air grew thick, choking them with an unbearable weight. Sarah could feel her strength waning, the shadows whispering in her mind, urging her to give in. The words weren't just in the room, they were inside her head. The bear's influence was stronger than anything she had ever imagined. It was everywhere, seeping into every corner of her being, slowly breaking her down. But then something shifted. Lily's face flashed in Sarah's mind, her daughter's innocent smile, the way she hugged Mr. Snuggles so tightly at night. That smile, that trust, was everything Sarah had fought for. Everything she had hoped for. She couldn't let this darkness take her away from her daughter. She couldn't let the bear consume Lily, couldn't let her become the vessel for whatever malevolent force lurked inside the cursed toy. "James," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse. "Lily, we have to save her." James squeezed her hand, his grip firm. "We will. Together." He turned toward the altar, his eyes hard with determination. The box was pulsating, its rhythmic thumping now deafening, like the sound of a heartbeat too loud to ignore. The shadows continued to writhe, but something in James' eyes, a spark of defiance, made the darkness flicker. "We need to destroy it," he said, his voice unwavering. "This is the source. We have to break it." But the shadows pushed back, their strength overwhelming, their pull stronger than ever. Sarah's knees buckled, and she felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. What could they possibly do? The darkness had already won, hadn't it? "Sarah, listen to me," James said, his voice cutting through the haze. "We can't let it win. We have the choice. It wants us to give in. But we choose not to." Sarah's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time she felt the weight of the choice before them. The choice to fight, to stand up against the darkness, even when it seemed impossible. The bear wanted them to surrender, to become a part of the curse. But they had the power to defy it. They always had. "I choose to fight," Sarah whispered, her voice stronger now, despite the overwhelming force around her. I choose to save my daughter." With that, she reached out, her hand trembling, and pulled the box away from the altar. As her fingers brushed against its surface, the shadows recoiled, hissing as if in pain. She could feel the darkness trying to claw at her, trying to tear her apart, but she held on, her resolve solidifying. James stood by her side, his hand gripping hers tightly as they faced the heart of the curse together. For a moment, everything stood still. The shadows paused as if they were unsure of what was happening, unsure of what they were up against. And then, with a final desperate effort, Sarah opened the box. Inside was not a relic of power, not a dark artifact or ancient talisman. It was the bear. The cursed Mr. Snuggles. Its eyes, once soft and comforting, were now cold and empty, its stitched mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. The dark force that had inhabited it for so long pulsed through the bear, but now, with the box open, the force seemed to writhe in pain. The very essence of the curse was unraveling. "No," Sarah whispered, her hand shaking as she held the bear. "You won't control her anymore." The shadows screamed in fury, the room shaking with an intensity that rattled their bones. But Sarah, with James beside her, stood firm. Together, they lifted the bear high, the darkness recoiling from its presence. The bear's once black eyes began to fade, the energy around it sputtering and fading as it lost its hold on the world. And then, with a final cry, the darkness shattered. The cabin fell silent. The oppressive air lifted, and the shadows retreated into the corners, leaving only the soft glow of the morning light filtering through the broken windows. The room was still. Empty. Silent. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt the weight lift from her chest. The curse had been broken. The bond severed. "Lily," Sarah breathed, her eyes brimming with tears. "We need to go home." They left the cabin, stepping out into the sunlight, the weight of the darkness finally gone. As they drove back to the motel, Sarah clutched the bear tightly in her hands. It was no longer a vessel of darkness, no longer a source of evil. It was simply a toy. A forgotten relic of a time that no longer held any power over them. Lily was waiting for them when they returned. The moment Sarah saw her daughter's smile, she knew they had made the right choice. She had saved her, and she had saved herself. As they embraced, Sarah whispered into Lily's ear, "You're safe now. We'll always protect you." And so, life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything they had experienced. The memories of the bear, of the cabin, and of the darkness that had nearly consumed them faded into the past, a dark chapter they had closed for good. But as Sarah lay in bed that night, the faintest whisper seemed to echo in her mind, not a voice of malice but a reminder. A warning. It's never truly over. She closed her eyes, the thought lingering in her mind, but it didn't scare her. Not anymore. Because she knew that no matter what came next, she would face it with the strength of her love for her daughter. And that, she believed, was the strongest force in the world.